What up, guys? Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, number 365. Let's do intro voice. Welcome to the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, episode 365.
We are here with
your host. So we got Cameron Shayne back on the podcast. We had him back on the podcast some years ago. I can't remember how many years ago, but it was several years ago. If you listen to this podcast and you kind of like his stuff, you can go back and listen to that one, and it kind of gives him a little bit more in his some of his earlier stories and stuff like that, and gets a little bit more in depth into his specific, some of the specifics of his stretching program, or not, I won't say stretching, but his mobility programs and things like that. But again, interesting guy. If you know who he is, if you don't know who he is, then, go up online and look him up afterwards. The guy moves in a way where, I think I say this on the podcast, it's like watching poetry. The way, when you take someone that takes words and just blends them together and makes some sentence that makes you go, damn, that was a good one. Maybe you guys don't geek out about that, but being a slight wordsmith, I look at them when I see something written really well, I'm like, damn, that was good. And so when you see him move, guy's 53, and you're like, 53, not supposed to move like that. He moves with the mobility of a baby, but with human extremities, right?
He's like a jungle cat, dude. He's like a cat. He's very I'd say he's fluid. His movement is so fluid. He flows in and out position. It's just crazy to watch him move. And I think it's a combination of he's done so many different things, martial arts and also movement type of specialties. Sure. He's just kind of blended those together, and it's kind of a clever name. He's a mixed movement arts. So MMA, but mixed movement arts.
So cool. When you listen to the podcast, you'll have some different ideas. Maybe you may or may not agree with some of them, but again, listen to it. And we've been talking a lot about old person stuff, and I just find that a lot of you guys that listen are trending 30 and north of 30, right? Not everybody, but a lot of you guys that listen are 30 and older, most of you. And so for me, I'm like, well, we can kind of go down this rabbit hole. So we'll be talking to him. We have another guest lined up in the near future who, again, will talk about this kind of movement stuff. Also an older guy that's involved in grappling and been involved in grappling in other sports for a long time, getting some ideas for us old folks, middle-aged folks, to stay a little bit more mobile, a little bit more focused on longevity. So he gives some ideas on what he does and his ideas. And again, hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast and get something from it. Big thanks to our sponsors for being here. Charlotte's Web, they're a part of the podcast. He's been sponsoring us for a number of years. It's been I think almost getting close to probably around 8.
7, 8 years.
It's been a long time, dude. Again, great products that they make. I've been to their farms, met a lot of their employees, cool people, a good mission behind the company itself, right? Making products that could serve a young woman, which is originally where Charlotte's Web came from. There was a young woman named Charlotte who had some issues that CBD oil basically assisted with, and they started to develop the oils. And so every product that they make goes back to, could we give this to Charlotte? Is this something that we feel like would be good for her? And that's kind of the mission that runs through it. So all their products are third-party tested to ensure the purity and the quality of what's in there is there. And again, they make really good stuff, everything from CBD oils, CBN products, which are really useful for going to sleep, staying asleep. They also have things such as functional mushrooms like reishi, lion's mane. And they have different supplements that go along with them to assist you with focus or stress management or whatever. If you guys want to check out any of their products, go to their website at charlottesweb.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. If you guys want to get some new gear for yourself, you want to do some new training gear, whether it be a gi, rash guard, shorts, or if you just want some really cool jiu-jitsu t-shirts, check out Epic Roll. You can go to the website at epicrollbjj.com. When you go there, just sort of browse around the website. And if you find something that draws your eye, strikes your fancy, you can use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Check out to save 20% off what they have. And great designs, great stuff, good quality. I get my rash guards made through them, and I really like it. So again, check them out at epicrollbjj.com. If you guys would like to support the podcast directly, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/The Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. We appreciate all of you that are Patreon members. It helps us out a lot. And again, if you guys want to check it out and get details on the perks that are added for a very inexpensive price, go to patreon.com/The Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. If you would like to get more focus with your training, go to my website at jujitsu.net/join, Join. When you join up, you'll get access to my daily email. The Chew Crew is what I call it. And then I'll start sending you my daily email. Now, what you get for joining up is I will send you an ebook and a video that goes along with that goes through 12 different strategies on how to add more focus to your training. So this is something where I tend to sort of favor a less training days approach. And if you're going to do that, I think that it's really useful. It's super important to make sure that you have a very focused set of training goals that you're after. You don't want to be on the mats just kind of going through the motions. A lot of people hit plateaus and everything else because when they step on the mat, you ask them, hey, like, why are you here? What are you doing? What are you working on? Oh, I'm just here rolling, right? Like just going with the flow. And that's a really good way to hit plateaus and have that feeling like you're moving and you're doing a lot, but you're not going anywhere. You know, like you think about if you don't have a clear goal, it's like driving around with no Jeep, like without having a direction, without having an end destination. It's like trying to like walk through a giant fog. You might be moving around a lot, but you have no idea where you're going. So maybe you're going in a good direction, maybe you're not, you don't know. And so it just gives you some ideas on how to create some focus for your rolling sessions. And if you guys want to check that out, it's at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN.
We just got back off the road. We were gone for about 4 months. So I've just been getting stuff, man.
Get back to the swing of things about being home.
Where have you been?
This year I got hired by the Phillies as their mobility coach. And so I ended up going to Clearwater, Florida for 6 weeks for preseason training camp. And then from there, we just started touring. And then we kind of didn't stop. And I went to Europe, back, blah, blah, blah. So now we're finally back home in Montana where we live, where we start our summer training camps, which is where we do all of our educational work. So that's it, man. Just being busy.
Busy year. What's that like working with those baseball players? Like, so you guys are getting into it and you're doing mobility. Like what is that like?
Well, kind of just to start from the beginning of the story, I was contacted by their right outfield player, Nick Cassianos, and he had seen me he started studying Jiu-Jitsu, which brings us to sort of all of our passions.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle. And then he found me, I guess, sort of in that Instagram algorithm. And he was like, hey, this is the guy I want to study with, not jiu-jitsu specifically, but I want to study movement because he's a 33-year-old, major league player. He's got $100 million contract. He's doing it, but he's also aging. And he's like, how do I'd like to age athletically. And he saw me and he was like, God, man, if this guy's 53 and he's moving like this, I'd like to see if, what he's doing. And so he got the strength coach for the Phillies to reach out to me. But, I don't play baseball. I never did. I played when I was a kid, but I never pursued baseball and like I did other sports when I got into high school. Like I played soccer, tennis, basketball. I played a lot of vertical sports, but baseball was kind of like, okay, cool. And then, so I didn't keep up. I don't know anything about pro baseball or collegiate baseball. And my dad, fan his whole life, me, nothing. So when he reached out and the guy, I didn't think much of it. And it was not even easy. I didn't even really get back to him. I was like, I'm busy. And I finally got back to him. He's like, hey, trying to get in touch with you to da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I don't even really, I honestly didn't think that anything I did would really relate to a baseball player. I was like, these guys are notoriously lazy athletes. And because your primary job in baseball is to sprint from one spot to another.
Yeah.
And then you're either grounding balls or you're catching balls in the outfield, or you're pitching, you're throwing, catching. So it's a fairly low output sport. You don't need a lot of cardio.
Mhm.
You don't need to be particularly strong because, little guys play, fat guys play, out of shape. It's just not, you know what I mean? It's just nothing you could imagine if you stuck a guy in the NBA. If you take every NBA player and you put them, you're like, because this guy's got to run up and down a court all day long. He's got to be physical, aggressive, jump, move. There's so much going on, say in basketball. But now, if you start watching Major League Baseball, you start seeing that the shortstops in the infield, I mean, you can be incredibly athletic in that sport. Like, you can be super athletic. And the plays, if you watch their highlight plays, you're like, Jesus, these guys, like, when they can do it, it's pretty impressive. It's not even pretty impressive. It's extremely impressive what they can do. When a ball is coming at them at 100 miles an hour and they dive in the air, catch it, roll, get up, throw it. I mean, it's high level. I didn't appreciate it until I got the job. I started studying the work. I was like, okay, what are the movement patterns? What do they look like? So, because once I went and met with them in Florida, I met with Nick and the head coach over there. I was like, okay, let me study this craft. So realizing that the way they move, the way they transition from, when I teach movement, I break it into 3 planes. I'll say, okay, we're on the first plane, which is very low, usually involving crawling to some degree.
Mhm.
You've got either 3 base points or 4 base points. And then I move up to the second plane, which is usually just what I call the athletic plane. Everybody who's an athlete sort of exists on plane 2 because you're sort of in a crouched, squat position, ready to move. Baseball, basketball, football, it doesn't matter. And then plane 3, which is sort of the highest plane, which would be volleyball, basketball. I'm leaping, I'm up off the ground. So 1, I'm crawling. 2, I'm just being, athletic. And 3, I'm leaping and jumping. So I was like, okay, what's interesting is that a shortstop will exist on all 3 of those levels or planes. He will go from diving to his stomach and rolling and getting up and back up to plane 2 and throwing, or he'll go from a plane 2 position, which is just ready position, right? He'll dive, he'll dive, catch the ball in the air, roll on the plane 1, get up, leap in the air and throw the ball on plane, on the 3rd plane. It's wild what this guy, what the highest level guys are doing. Then you start to realize, oh, this is why these guys are making $100 million.
Mhm.
This is what's good, because you're like, why are baseball players paid more than anybody pretty much in professional sports? And you start to realize when they can move, they can move. I mean, it is an athletic it's a spectacular show of athleticism. So I was like, okay. So I got there and I just started working with the fundamentals, getting them to understand what the first objective was for me and Nick to develop a program that would basically activate them, get them ready to go play, turn on the switches. So we were like, what are we going to do to get that started so that the connective tissue and the muscles, everything's switched on so that they can go be athletic, which is what I've already been doing with combat athletes, because that was my objective with combat athletes. How do I get this? Because with the work that I do, there's 2 different, sorry to jump around.
No, it's fine. I like tangents. I'm with you. I'm following.
Too much coffee. So the work with can be divided into 2 containers. 1, you use it to activate, or 2, you use it to train. and condition and strengthen. So activation would look like moving through positions, transitioning from, say, your back to your knees to your up to your down to, you're moving to get yourself ready to wrestle, right? I just want to I want to make sure that the blood is moving through all my tissue and that tissue is ready to load up and take force and rebound force. Then 2, I'm conditioning with the material. So I'm preparing I'm preparing the tissue, for long-term use. I'm conditioning it. I'm getting this guy ready, I'm building the strength of the tissue, and I'm increasing volume and size. So and capacity. So I'm looking to play with those tools a little bit different. And you could imagine this as a person. Let's say, I'm assuming, you do some weightlifting or something with, right? Imagine you're using a squatting exercise or technique, or, something. You're using it to warm up, quote unquote. That's the word we use. I like the word activate because warming up it implies something that isn't, that's more of sort of a broad, it's a broad, it's not accurate. It's not accurate. I don't think heat is what you're producing.
Yeah. You're getting those muscles turned on. You're activating the muscles to do what they're getting ready to do later, right?
Right. So when we say, hey, let's warm up, I don't think that's the most accurate, when we're talking about biology, physiology, I'm not sure that that's what's happening in the body as much as blood flow is happening.
Okay.
And when that blood flow is there, right? When we start to get the channels open and we're moving, and not only is the blood flow there, but the blood flow is there consistent and throughout, not just in that big muscle, not just in this part of the muscle, not just in that part of the whole structure of the human being, where it's like, oh, my quads are always kind of warm if I walk around all day. But what about what about all the other connective tissue and muscles? So sure. I think that's what we're looking for with our quote unquote warm up. Our act is to activate and to get the total system, the chain, the kinetic chain, to get everything switched on so that everything's participating in the action versus loading up parts and pieces and having all these compensations occurring.
What do you think as far as like that activation phase? Is there a mental piece that you like to add or incorporate? Like, is there any kind of cueing that you give, and kind of breath work that comes in conjunction with that you're trying to, get the whole body kind of working and turned on properly?
I always tell people with breath, I always, I'm not one to debunk, I think, to try to play that game of debunking, popular trends, but I always remind people that breath is an automatic function, and that, you breathe by design. Like, you and I, we've all, been out there going 100 miles an hour rolling, and, you'll breathe or you'll die. You can the body learns to breathe. I don't think I've ever seen a leopard teaching another leopard how to breathe to run down an antelope. I just think that it's something that we've trended, like the same as using the ice and cold exposure. It's trendy. I get it. But at the same time, how did we do without it? Gee, I don't know. Or let's crunch our toes because it's going to turn on our myofascia. And it's like, well, how did we ever become athletic without, crunching a towel with our toes to activate our myofascia. It's just like, it's just like, it's Instagram world, so.
Sure. Well, everybody's trying to promote that one, like they take one little thing that might have some benefits to it, and there could be some truth to it, right? But then they try to extrapolate that as to like, this will cure all of your problems, and everything is dependent upon this one thing that I'm talking about, because most people want to sort of like get rid of nuance and just sort of like, hey, I want to like be able to focus on one thing and have this nice, clear, easy, cut and dry answer for all my problems. So now I can just roll my foot on this little crunchy thing, and there we go.
And you know what that looks like in jiu-jitsu? A shit show is what you're like. If I focus on just this one thing, or coach, tell me how to do this armbar just that one way,
Yeah. Give me the one technique that'll defeat all of my opponents. Well, good luck. Yeah,
and the one, the one technique or the one way to do it. It's just like, it's like, guys, it just doesn't work that way. Yep. So I think that, back to the question, what I try to focus on is tempo, because I believe that tempo is the difference between an athlete and an athlete and a non-athlete. The athlete has the ability to change tempo, to change rhythm, to adapt, to move, slow to explosive, explosive to slow. These are the distinctions, you know what I mean, between that average guy and the guy who's an athlete. And I think it's important here. I've been kind of debating this lately with people, which is because I use the word athlete so often, because in our school, we call our students mixed movement athletes.
Okay.
Because they learn mixed movement arts. They don't just learn jiu-jitsu. They learn jiu-jitsu plus they learn yoga. They learn mobility work. They learn striking. They learn sprinting. They learn calisthenics. It's mixed movement, training, because I'm looking to develop the athleticism. But what the nuance here is, I'm not looking to develop a person into an athlete. I'm looking to develop the athlete within the person. Because if we stop thinking of ourselves as athletes, which we have, because we've reduced the definition to someone who plays a sport, and then someone gets to say, well, I opt out of that. I don't play sports. I'm not an athlete. I do jiu-jitsu. Because you wouldn't believe how many times I go to teach a seminar, and I ask a room full of jiu-jitsu athletes, how many of you guys think of yourself as athletes, and how few people raise their hands?
Sure.
And I'm like, guys, we probably participate in one of the most athletic things you can do on the planet. And none of you guys think of yourselves as athletes. Now, that's convenient when you want to not be responsible for the an athlete needs to be responsible for. You don't want to eat like an athlete. You don't want to sleep like an athlete. You don't want to train like an athlete. You don't want to recover like an athlete. So what you get to do is show up, fuck around in the jiu-jitsu studio, injure yourself eventually, because you will. And then you'll stop training in jiu-jitsu by the time you're 45. Because another thing I do very often is I ask the room, how many people in this room are 20 to 30? How many people are 30 to 40? How many people are 40 to 50? How many people are 50 or above? And I promise you that 95% of the time, I'm the only person that raises my hand. And then the other times, there's only maybe 2 other people in that entire room that are above 50 years old. And I go, guys, how is it that there's a room full of people and every one of you guys told me that you're going to do jiu-jitsu your whole life, and there's only one person in this room that's 50 years old and above? So those numbers don't add up. So everybody's either a liar or you mean what you say, but you don't know how to do it. So if they think they mean what they say, and they don't really want, like, it's like I've had this with fighters, right? Where the fighter says, I want to be
I want to be in the ring, I want to go fight, but then it's like you give them the training schedule, and like this is what it looks like to work towards being a pro fighter, and they're like, oh, fuck. Like you said, kind of like you think you might want to be like this, but here's what this entails. You have to be very thoughtful about all these other aspects of your life, not just coming in here for an hour, 2 hours a day, rolling, and then the rest of the day you get to just like eat whatever the hell you want to, sleep like shit, drink booze, and everything else.
Yeah, I think that people think of fighting as still a hobby and not a profession. Because if you say I'm going to go professionally compete, whether it's jiu-jitsu, it's grappling, it's wrestling, it's MMA, you are stepping into the realm of professional athletes. And if you try to come in as a hobbyist, you're gonna get your ass handed to you. You know, this isn't the day of Rich Franklin where you could be a school teacher.
Yeah.
And then go and be in the UFC at the same time. Those days are over. They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So So activate. Back to your point with activation, you focus on tempo. You focus on slow. You focus on helping them to realize that the more time under tension they are, the more activated that connective tissue gets.
And you do that, like what kind of things are you for activation phase? What kind of movements are you incorporating? Maybe let's talk about this. Let's talk about kind of the separation. What kind of movements were you incorporating for the baseball player, for example, and then the grappler? Was it some of the similar things, or some unique things? Or how did that look differently? So maybe how do we use that for ball sports, quote unquote ball sports, or basketball, things like that, versus someone that's a wrestler or a grappler, MMA fighter?
I think the beauty is that you can do it for all sports. Now, everybody's going to have a different approach. And I noticed that the strength trainers that were working there had a different approach than I did. But yet there was a interesting crossover or intersection of those ideas. And here's where it was. I would have someone work from, say, their back, transitioning up to over to their side, onto their knees, coming up, transitioning to their squat, going back down to their knees, the way you might think of a wrestler changing levels. The strength trainers were using bands to do that.
Yeah.
And they were isolating one area like the hip, and they were using resistance to create that same activation, but they were doing it by isolating that area, which I personally, and again, not to get into the politics of training, but I personally see it differently. I think that chains of movement produce better result in the overall athleticism of the body versus an isolated activation where you take someone and you just have them connect a band to their foot and lift their leg, lift their leg, lift their leg, lift their leg against that resistance. Of course, that's going to activate that area. The problem is it doesn't finish the chain of movement, nor does it start the chain of movement from its origin of its starting point. It's because, how does a human start moving? Well, first we sort of get up off our backs. We transition to our knee. What are we doing here in the sport? But let's just take again, I'll play along. You're standing and you're elevating that foot with the band connected and you've got resistance. What I'm arguing here is that you're producing relative strength and relative activation versus absolute activation and absolute strength, because you're focused on this area, which is relative and not absolute. You're going to produce, specific activation, which in all fairness, I think sometimes they really are. They're like, I need to get this guy's hip flexors fired up. I need to get this guy's glute medius turned on. I need to get this guy's da-da. And I'm like, yeah, but why not get the whole frame going? Why not get the whole system doing the same thing? You can get it all in if you just keep chaining the movement versus, because once you stick a rubber band on somebody, they can't move freely. That's the problem. They can only move in that particular pattern that the exercise allows. So I'm looking for this person to actually more like, think of a Turkish get up. You've got the kettlebell and you've got to manage it the entire time from your back to your side, to your knees, to standing back down. You understand? You get a whole chain of movement that you get to go through there. But if you put a rubber band on someone, you can only get them from point A to point B. It's hard to get to C, D, E, and F because of the limitation of the band. Mm-hmm. It's not the band's fault. It's just the nature of the tool. But think about putting a 40-pound weight vest on and then asking you to go through a bunch of burpees with, let's say, 40 pounds with burpees on. You got to come up, you got to go back down, all the way down, come back up, but you got to go through a full pattern of movement carrying that weight vest versus only going from here to there, here to there, here to there. So I'm not the biggest fan of, I get it, I understand it, and I'm not even going to debate the merit because I think it does do its job. But I would do it differently. I do it differently. I'm looking for, and that's why some of the baseball players, as an example, because I'm an elective, the baseball players get to choose whether they want to work with me or not. That's how it goes. When you're a professional athlete, nobody tells you what to do. And this is one of the downsides of, and one of the dark sides of the athletic process. Once you get paid $1 million, or so you can walk in the room and say, I'm doing this and I'm not doing that.
Yeah. And
if you don't like the feedback, you call your agent. Your agent calls the team president, and the next thing you know, a good example is if you want in the kitchen, if you want Cocoa Puffs and Reese cups in the kitchen during season, it will get there. If you are a $100 million player, you will suddenly see Reese cups on the counter over there in the kitchen. You're like, how the fuck are Reese cups in here? Mm-hmm. These guys are Ferraris. Why are they eating junk food? Well, because one wants it. Mm-hmm. And this is what I would argue is one of the problems of modern professional sports is the players have become uncoachable because each one of them demands what they want and what they prefer, and they don't really like to be coached anymore.
It's like going to your doctor and your doctor's like, hey, you have this disease and we need to give you this to fix it. Well, I don't want to take that medicine. I want to do this instead, right? Like you have someone that's giving you a potential prescription to help you out with your issues, but instead of taking it, you're like, I don't want to. You see it all the time. One of my docs was one of my docs is trains at my gym. He has a person that weighs 450 pounds and they're like, hey, I've got back pain. Hey, well, there's a way to fix that doesn't require medication. Let's go on a walk and change your diet. They don't hear it, right? Like, so they want their own prescription that doesn't involve stuff that they don't necessarily want to do.
Yeah. And the difference here, which is interesting, is that a medical professional you hire that individual. They're a service provider. Sure. What's ironic about the other side of this is that the athlete has been hired by the team and in theory is on the team and is a paid employee. Yeah. And in theory should be listening and abiding by the team's procedures, and yet they don't. But bringing us back to my statement about elective work is that the players have the option to work with me or not. So the ones who loved working with me, those were your guys who really understood the value of full chain of movement training for longevity versus the guys who just wanted to do it the way they've been doing it. The guys who want to who got the idea that warming up is, quote unquote, is not about just doing things to make sure your body feels, doesn't feel, kind of sticky, but that warming up or, switching on, activation is a process of both neurological switching and physiological switches. It's like getting you ready to move through patterns, to go and be a cat, be a tiger on the field, be able to ready to leap, move, turn. And so working with me, because of all my movement patterns and the way I train pattern work, they got that experience versus sitting next to a machine and connecting a rubber band and going 1, 2, 3, 4. It just gave them a different feeling.
So here's a question for you. You kind of mentioned it, that this baseball player contacts you, and he says he wants to age athletically, right? And for you as a guy, right? Like you said you're 52.
53, yeah. Mm-hmm.
53, right? So 53 years old, you're in jiu-jitsu, you're involved in that, you do all this movement stuff. You move in a way where, like, it's so interesting when you watch humans do something exceptional. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can watch it and go, you can just look at it and go, I appreciate that. That is really, like, that human is doing something exceptional. You're talking about baseball. Mm-hmm. I don't find baseball really entertaining to watch, but if I see a play, like you said, where some guy does something really crazy and you're watching this human that's like using this tool as an extension of their body that they've done for 20 plus years, it's just wild to watch. And then watching guys like you who can move in this way, you're like, it's just like poetry watching you move. And it's really cool to see. So with that, right, you're doing this exceptional thing. So again, you're able to do these things. You're 53 years old. You're training jiu-jitsu. I can't remember the last time you competed, but I remember seeing you compete. So it's something you do.
I actually competed last year and won I won the Europeans.
Very cool.
I got second in the worlds in Nogi.
Hell yeah.
Both in Nogi.
Very cool. Congrats, very cool. So, my question is to you, aging athletically, a lot of the people that follow me are jiu-jitsu guys. So what are some ideas that you have about aging athletically, aging to where you can still be involved in, the sports that we do, so that, there can be more 50-year-old guys at the seminars raising their hands, hey, I'm 50 or older. What are some ideas that you have on that have been useful to you or people that you've worked with?
The secret to me of athletic longevity is to approach your training or the subject the way that you would approach maintenance of pretty much anything. But let's just take let's take a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever. It's not just changing the oil. That's great, but that's not going to do it. It's changing the oil. It's observing the mechanics. It's tightening. It's tweaking. It's sometimes needing to replace. It's listening to the sounds, tuning. It's a full, which if you metaphorically relate that to the human experience, it's eating, sleeping, moving, recovering. It's the full thing. So I think we've got to make sure that we're being honest and with ourselves and with each other about what it takes to age athletically. And it takes all of it. It takes all of it. It's just not true that you can do one part. But because if you do, you're going to find that compensation is going to inevitably, damage something. You have to. The whole system has to participate in longevity. It has to participate in athleticism, so that you don't cause a compensatory habit and behavior, just like think just nutritionally. If the body starts to be deprived of certain nutrients, it'll try to steal them from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It'll survive. It'll do what it needs to do. It's like, okay, how do we get this? What do we need this? But at some point, you will go into liver failure. Something metabolically will fail because you can't borrow from Peter to pay Paul, but for so long. And so you can go without sleep, but for how long? Mm-hmm. You can go without proper nutrition. You can go without stretching and strengthening correctly for so long. It always ends up that what we don't like to do as humans is we don't like to. I think we don't like to. Trying to find the right way to say this. We have a resistance to the complexity of what it means to be an animal because we've reduced our environment to sort of a one-trick pony. Like the human animal is basically an acrobatic ape. Okay, mm-hmm. We're an acrobatic ape. So if you think about what an acrobatic, like dominant, incredibly impressive ape is doing, swinging through the trees. In like you've probably watched a chimpanzee chase a monkey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. And you're
seen
like,
the Nat Geo documentaries and stuff on them. Yeah, of course.
And you're like, holy shit, that thing moves. It's not like casual. Monkeys are fast and they are agile and they can jump incredible distances. They can travel so fast. That chimpanzee's right there at 135 pounds, moving right behind it with every bit of that agility and that speed and that ability to leap and grab and swing. We are an incredible animal, really impressive. And once we evolved, and I don't mean evolve, I don't think of evolution as being the term like you've gotten better. We just changed. Once we changed,
we adapted to our environment.
Right. We adapted to this sort of savanna, this plain, and we started standing upright. We started running, and then we started migrating and traveling the way we do. We added on to our skill sets, but we didn't lose our ability to swing, climb, crawl, leap. Because if you watch a human at their finest, just take something simple like American Ninja.
Yeah.
These fuckers are amazing, man. They can do crazy stuff. And it just tells you we're still capable of doing that. Yeah. We can still swing and climb and leap and do the whole jam. And we can sprint really fast. So we just added on to our ability. Maybe we gave up a little bit of this or a little bit of that, but nothing to where you go, oh, we just can't do that anymore. So when you think about what we're capable of, and you think what we've reduced humans to, walking on a sidewalk, to get into a car, to sit in a seat, to go to a place, to get out of the seat, to walk on a sidewalk, up a few steps, to take an elevator, to another seat. There's just, that is the greatest reduction of human capacity, of this animal's capacity to move. Yeah. And then we wonder why we don't want to do what it takes to be athletic, even though we are natural athletes. Athletics is not, I want to redefine this term. It is not a person who plays a sport. It is a human's potential. We are athletes. We've always been sporty. We've always competed, whether it was for food or for survival or for social position, right? Whether we were just trying to be seen within our tribe. as the best. Well, who's the best? The guy that can throw the spear the furthest, that can run that can kill the most, that can bring the food home. We've always been competing. And competition has always produced, our warrior class and our social hierarchy. It's always about who. I mean, let's be honest. At the end of the day, whoever can get the food runs the show. You can reduce it to that all day long. You can talk, but if you can't kill and eat, if you can't, protect and, if you can do, you don't have much, and that's how it's always good. So I know that I'm getting a little bit abstract, but the point is our ability to be a multidimensional mover was essential for our survival.
Right.
Now we've reduced it to being a very, very sedentary, lazy, one-trick pony.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to your idea that, like you said, you have eliminated this idea that, moving around and doing this stuff, this is for those athlete people, not for me, when all of us have the potential it ingrained in us. And then if you're going to then take on that thing of, like, say you want to do jiu-jitsu or you want to do some sport and you want to do it for a long time, then you then again have to go back to treating yourself like an athlete, where it's not just, hey, we're training for 2 hours and then we do nothing else and fuck off for the rest of the day. It's we do these things, and then you start looking at the body holistically. And like you said, like whether you got that Ferrari, you're tuning into your body. Ooh, that right side of my body feels a little off today. Maybe I should take it into the shop to go get it looked at, or to work on it, to give it some rest, whatever it is, or, feeding yourself the right type of fuel. Because if you're going to be a high performance vehicle, then you can't be eating shitty. You can't be giving it shitty fuel. You can't you're not going to drive a Ferrari around and give it unleaded, it's not going to work.
And that point is so relevant, because there is not a single person on this planet that if you give them a Ferrari and they have any common sense in their head will put shit fuel into that, because they know that it will destroy the vehicle. So you got the same guy that won't dare put bad fuel into his expensive vehicle, but he'll eat shit. It's just it's because we're insane.
Yeah. When this is the most important thing that we're given, because, like if someone said, hey, do you want to have like some sort of form of cancer, or would you rather have a Ferrari? Right. Like, would you rather have a Ferrari and have cancer, or have no Ferrari, but no cancer? You'd be like, no Ferrari, no cancer any day of the week. I'll be all right.
If I could build on that point.
Yeah, go ahead.
On this thought is that, to your point, we don't have the ability to make the decision that that was a perfect moment of like, hey, what would you like? Cancer?
Sure.
But I can look at the same person and go, what would you like? Food sprayed with pesticide, or food not sprayed with pesticide? I can't get that person to make a simple decision like that in the grocery store, where it's just like, bro, this isn't we're not splitting the atom here. I'm asking you, do you want your food with chemical on it or not? And the fact that someone can't decide that in a moment, and then we think they're going to make more complicated decisions.
Sure.
No way.
Well, even to your food point, even saying, hey, listen, like, cause small changes here, right? So you say, listen, like, will you go buy food you actually have to prepare yourself, like real food, or are you going to go get it out of a plastic package, or get it served to you from a drive-through window? Again, like yes, this will require more time, but in a lot of cases cheaper, but also too, like, thinking long-term, like this is going to be like when you go to the doctor and get your blood work done, when you're thinking like years down the road, this is the thing that's going to support you more. Yeah, it takes a little extra time, but I mean, what else are you going to do? You're going to scroll on your phone and look at through dumb stuff? Or, I mean, you got like 5-10 minutes, not a big deal. An hour of your time, a few times a week to meal prep. It's not that big of a deal. You can get it done.
Well, because you place a premium value on yourself and your health and wellness. And the average person does not place that premium on themselves. And what's ironic to me, again, is that when that person decides to become an athletic hobbyist, they again make the mistake of believing that you can do athletic things as a hobbyist. But the truth is, you will only eventually get injured. You will only eventually get injured, because that is what we see. And I don't care if we're talking about running, distance, if we're talking about distance or real like cycling, if we're talking about weight training, whatever. If you act like a hobbyist inside of any sport container, you are going to get injured. You're going to get hurt. And by the time you end up being, 50 or so, all you're going to be doing is looking for meds, looking for operations as a way to fix problems versus, letting the body heal, which it does. And it will heal anything, including cancer.
Yeah.
But we will just continue to buy into the absurdity of convenience over just nature. Just let nature has designed a perfect, we're a perfect, organism and system. It's just like when people sprain their ankle, it's like, we grew up in that generation where it was like, you sprain your ankle, walk it off. That's what I was told to do. And that's also what I did. I got up and I immediately started walking on my ankle unless it was broken. And then you went through this whole era of time where they're like, oh no, ice elevation, don't move it. But what animal sprains its ankle and has the convenience of elevation and ice and rest before it gets eaten? Because nature wants you to move immediately and get blood moving through that joint to get that thing healed as quickly as possible. It's already there. Everything we need is there, which is why all pharmaceuticals are based off of things that we have found from nature inside of the jungle. We're just, all we're doing is, we're just copying what's existing.
Well, that's like what pharmaceutica means, like what, plants in Latin or something. Like it like derives, it's like the word pharmaceuticals derives from, like, I think it's like plants, like, right, like pharmaceutica. I remember reading that, and then I talked to one of my guys who was a chemist who like worked at like a pharmaceutical place. He's like, oh yeah, like these chemicals this comes from eggs, this comes from this. I'm like, I don't know. You just think like, oh, they're chemicals, but they're being derived from these compounds from different things in nature, because nature already has it there, right? We're just figuring out how to use it differently.
Yeah, and the danger with all pharmaceuticals or any of that thing is concentration. And anytime you concentrate something in the body, you run the risk of again, creating an imbalance. Just like if you overload the body with sugar, you get diabetes. It's a very simple system. You can't put concentrates into anything. It has to be the right balance. So coming back to your question is, how do you age with, as an athlete? How do you get longevity out of it? You don't over concentrate on anything. You create a beautiful balance of a little bit of everything that then produces this incredible outcome.
Well, it's like if you ask someone, going back to these theoretical questions, hey, look, man, if you could take X amount of dollars, whatever it is, some number that represents a sizable chunk for you as a person, and you said, hey, listen, you got to give this guy this money, and then nothing's going to happen, and then in 3 years, randomly, you're going to magically have this movement, this athleticism, this movement capability that you've never experienced before, that you used to have, that now you have back, right? Or you could have to do the work throughout these days, X amount of days per week or whatever, for a consistent longer time. If it was just the money, you'd be like, of course I'd do it. Just give it to me. And I'll wait to 3 years, no problem. But if you said, oh, I have to do something for 3 years straight. Oh, well. And again, it's those things where it's like, you want it, right? So just be honest. If you're going to make that decision, if you like, I say this stuff with food, if you could say, hey, I could lose all the weight that I need to lose if I could give this guy, $10,000. You do it in a heartbeat if you were really having trouble and you had the money to spend. But it comes down to you having to do the work. And so it's like, just if you're gonna get into that game, at least be honest with yourself. Like, oh, I'm not willing to do it. It's the answer is there for me. But I got to do the work. And so
I can respect that guy. Yeah, I can respect that guy that just goes, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to do that.
That's it. Right.
I get tired when I have a low threshold of tolerance for people that are like, yeah, man, I need to do that, bro. I'm like, shut the fuck up, stop, because Just stop. But you know, what's interesting that you, when you said that, what made me think for a moment, what I find interesting about understanding time frame is that I don't think I could have answered that question when I was 25 or 30 or 35. At 53, I can go, how long does it take to do this? And I can go, oh, okay. Well, let me tell you from my experience how long that injury takes to recover from, how long that takes to recover from, how long this takes to build, because I've done it, you know, I've gotten in and out of shape numerous times. So I know what that process looks like. It's not my first rodeo, you know, losing real strength. Because one of the first transitions I made, I was really strong as a young athlete when I was doing mostly striking combat arts. And then I got involved in the yoga world. And I switched from that calisthenics style strength that I was using for, you know, just getting big and strong to the yogic work, because as a yogi, because there's a couple ways you can practice yoga. You can really chase flexibility, or you can chase what is more strength. And you don't focus on flexibility. You focus on sort of feats of strength. So holding handstands, transitioning, floating down, floating up, balancing. You've seen that kind of stuff. That was the kind of yoga I practiced, which is more of an Ashtanga, traditional Ashtanga style, which I was first introduced to, which is the yoga they would teach young boys who had a lot of energy. You teach them basically an athletic style of yoga. Keep them, you know, working and competing to keep them interested. And that was the first yoga style I was introduced to. So I took my strength and I applied it right away to that. And I was working on handstands and pressing. And what you found was a lot of that material was borrowed from gymnastics that the Indians had borrowed from the British when they had been working with acrobatics and gymnastics. And, you know, they had all sort of been trading information. So a lot of it found its way into contemporary yoga. So I was doing that stuff. But what I noticed at some point, I had lost the power of muscle volume, and I had traded it for the power of absolute collective strength. So in other words, I could hold a position that looked like a gymnast would hold a position, and you'd be like, fuck, man, how are you doing that? Like, I can hold positions that are just really unusual, but you see it in gymnastics. But I lost the muscular power to, as an example, to press a certain amount of weight, or to do that position and hold it, and do it 30 times in a row, which takes more muscle than it does to do a one-off where you just like demonstrate connected power, strength, just boom, versus, okay, I'm going to do this 25 times. That takes muscle volume, but it's kind of weird, because you ever seen a skinny girl and she's holding some position? You're like, how's that girl without really any muscle volume doing that? Because the connective tissue can get built and can get developed and become really strong. And it doesn't take a lot of muscular size or volume to do that trick. But if you start adding on something like, okay, give me 25 of those. Give me something that takes muscle, horsepower. Think of it like horsepower. So what I didn't realize, I had traded horsepower for, okay, a good example is, you ever been in an electric car? You know how fast those fuckers will go from 0 to 60?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just shoo, like a rocket ship. But then they can't do that. Once they hit a certain speed, that's it. But a combustible engine, that thing will go because horsepower. It's a different mechanism. And I kind of became an electric car. I could do this stuff that was really kind of one-off cool, but once I reached capacity, I could no longer do things that required volume, that required quantity, because muscular strength and power, I just didn't have enough muscle. So then I switched and started building muscle mass again. The beauty was all that connective tissue strength I had built from yoga, I just transitioned right into my calisthenics. And then you put them together and I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm strong, and I'm strong from a connective tissue strength perspective, which is like gymnastics strength holding an iron cross. And I also have the volume to do that longer, bigger, with more, you know what I mean? Just more muscle meant more horsepower.
Yeah. So here's a kind of sort of a question for you. I'm just curious because I know you've trained. I'm sure you've trained in the gi, nogi, done both. But you were saying you won stuff in nogi. Do you have a preference? Because a lot of older guys I know, they say how much they love the gi. As I get older, I tend to find that I like training nogi a little bit more, just from personal preference. It seems to be a little bit easier in my body. What has your experience been, right? As a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and as you're getting older, and we're all sort of chasing that ability to train longer as we get older. And what's worked best for you, or what is your preference now?
Well, I don't want to piss anybody off, but if I'm being honest, I mean, I'm just, again, my experience is, nogi is harder because you got to be more precise with your gripping and your transitions, and you got to be more athletic. And I understand as you get older, the gi is a lazier game, and it's now here's the irony: it's a more technical game. Because it's the gi, which means there's 40 problems to deal with. Sure.
Handles everywhere, grips everywhere. Yeah.
Right. So you can't deny what's more technical. If you have a black belt, you sit 10 of us together, no one's going to dispute whether gi is more technical. There's a lot more going on, more problems to solve at a high level when you've got a really good gi guy who has a lot of gi game, really understands grips, really understands the complexity of grips, versus you were going to take all that off, and now it's just going to come down to really who's more athletic, because the truth is you can take a kid with zero jiu-jitsu skill. He's just an athlete, a savage. Let's say he's just a savage football player, and he's really athletic. You give that kid to an aged black belt. That black belt, let's say he's 50 years old. You put him no-gi together, and you say, all right, kid, all I want you to do is not let this guy get control of you. That's your only obligation. I don't need you to try to take this guy and dominate him. You're just not going to let him get control of you. I will put money down 9 out of 10 rounds. If you give and you make them short rounds, that black belt cannot get control of that 20-year-old kid if he's strong and jacked and he knows what he's doing. Because at some point you're fighting an athlete, and you don't have to be skilled to know how to be difficult. You and I both know that. I think that's when where the field levels out. And that's why I said a 20-year-old and a 50-year-old. You take two 20-year-olds, a black belt 20-year-old and a black belt. I think that is going to look very different.
Sure.
But the 50-year-olds cardio, their ability, their conditioning, their ability to just go round after round, it's going to diminish very fast.
Youth, man, it's a superpower.
It's a superpower. So yeah. When we talk about aging, I would argue this: you're smarter to keep you're smarter, and this is probably going to be a controversial opinion. You're smarter to play more Nogi as you age, because it's going to force you to stay more athletic. You're going to have to wrestle. You're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to work on those elements of transition, and you have to move a lot more. And if you play gi as you age, I think you're going to risk, and this again is an absolute statement. I know that there are exceptions, but as you age, you're going to find all the tricks that keep you, that help you win in the gi against athleticism. When there is nothing, there are no tricks in no-gi to win against athleticism. You just have to be good. You have to be equally athletic. You have to know your shit, because there are no tricks. I mean, it's a level playing field at all times, because there are no secret grips. You can't do anything to me in no-gi pretty much that I don't know what I'm dealing with, unless we get into leg entanglement. As long as we're talking the exception of leg entanglement, we're talking about wrestling, positional wrestling. You've got to, we both stand. You've got to take me down. As far as basic fundamental takedowns, getting up, getting down, getting up, getting down, it kind of gets it kind of gets reduced to a bunch of principles pretty quick. Let's be honest. How many takedown options do you have? You got collar ties. You got arm drags. You got double legs, single legs, ankle picks. But once you kind of get through those basics, what are you going to do? That's what I find in my division as an example, because I'm in Masters 5. Nobody wants to wrestle in Masters 5. So what do you think they do? They pull guard on me immediately. And then I'm already at an advantage, because I'd much rather pass. I'm like, great, you just sat down. Here I go. I mean, for me, that's, again, my opinion. But if the guy I lost against in the Masters Worlds, McVicker, you might even, you're right.
Yeah, John's tough.
He's won many. He's won. I think, in fact, John won.
Jack, sorry.
Or Jack McVicker. Correct.
Jack's up in Indiana.
Yeah,
it is Jack McVicker. That's right. He's Megaton's black belt. He won the first no-gi gold in the first no-gi IBJJF tournament.
Yeah.
In whatever division he was in. That's how long he's been doing it. So when I knew I was going to compete against him, I was like, all right, it's going to end up being me and this guy. I know it, because we're going to meet there at the top. So I was like, I've been working on my wrestling, because he beats everybody wrestling, because nobody wants to wrestle in Masters 5, maybe even in 4. So I stood up and I was like, all right, let's go. And I'd worked on my wrestling, and that I was like, I'm not going to pull guard. I'm not going to pull guard. I'm not going to pull guard with this guy. He beats everybody wrestling. I'm going to beat him I'm going to fight him where he wins. And we had an amazing match. I lost by 2 advantage points, because he got around to my back and got the advantage of getting the position, but didn't keep it. And, that was, for me, a victory, because normally he beats everybody. He submits, or he gets his takedowns, and I was like, and I knew, because I'm going to fight again this year. And I'm like, and that's all I work on right now is wrestling. That's all I do. It's wrestle, because I know that is where jiu-jitsu is right now. It is. And if you're not stand-up wrestling, you're being left behind. It's just like leg locks. You're being left behind. If you don't understand, it's like, so I know that's we went on a long tangent for the question, but the reality is, if you're going to tease something, if you're going to tease out something like that, the reality is no-gi will force you to be more athletic as you age. The gi will allow you to be lazier. That's my now, whether or not that's whether or not you choose to do that or not, I would say statistically that holds true.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think there's some truth to it. Again, like with everybody else, it's like when you're listening to ideas, it's like you have to take them on, and this is other people's experience, and you glean from it, and you sort of you try it on like a pair of pants and see how it fits for you, right? But I think there's some truth to that, because I think it kind of goes back to kind of a general idea that we've talked about multiple times in a way where, like in lifting, everybody loves to do the lifts they're good at, right? It's why you'll see a guy with a big giant chest and no legs, right? Because he doesn't like doing the leg lifts. So he'll just go bench press and bicep curl and everything else. But there's so much to be gained from doing sometimes those difficult things. It's why you have, people that go into jiu-jitsu and they have great offense, but they never develop the defense, or why you get black belts who never allow themselves to be put out of position because they don't want to lose anymore. They don't want to look bad in front of their students. And so they go into their gyms and they never let people put them in bad spots. And then the minute they get put in a bad spot in a competition, they're done. They're cooked. And so I think there's value in it where, like, for me, I do both. And I like doing both, and I get value from both of them. And I think there's a lot of value for people to get out of Nogi, because like you said, you have to be very precise with your grips and your hand fighting, because you don't have the wiggle room to I'm just going to grab something. And then, it forces you to move. It forces you to be a little bit more active and deal with that sort of situation, and maybe be a little bit more uncomfortable sometimes, because you do have these young athletic guys that can sort of horsepower you a little bit, right? I've had that experience with some of my guys. And then there's the other side where the gi, I think for some people, they write off the gi. I don't want to deal with it. But there's a lot of like value in learning how to think it through the gi, because when you get into a gi position, a lot of times you have to slow down, because like you said, there's 40 different options. This guy's like slinging his lapel through your legs, and now you have to stop and think. And a lot of times you can take that thought process of that problem solving mindset back over to Nogi, and you can use it in like your escapes. If you can escape out of a gi position without the ability to be able to just be slippery, your escapes are like way better. Then you take that over to Nogi, you're much better off. So I think there's value in both of them. And I think kind of like the idea from, like we talked about, dieting, stretching, doing all these different things that maybe don't come natural to you, that maybe you don't enjoy doing. There's a lot of value in doing those things, because again, sometimes it's the things you're not doing that's the things they actually need, or the things that could serve you better. So I think there's some truth to it, though. I think there's truth in doing some of these things, like you said, like that maybe it's uncomfortable for you, but it's forcing you to, again, when we think about like stimulus, right? It's kind of getting out of your comfort zone. That's what forces you to grow. So it's keeping you, active. And so maybe it's uncomfortable. But that's going to keep you growing in certain areas, and maintain that athleticism, because the stimulus is still there. And,
your points are those were fantastic points, and I think you argued that, for me, you were compelling, because you made the points that matter, which are, hey, it's the gi is a complex network of problems, and forces critical thinking in a way that Nogi doesn't. And so you could argue that Nogi is more athletic. The gi is more complex. They complement each other beautifully. But the question, which is interesting, the question is, what should I do as I age? I would say, maybe, honestly, I would say probably for me, I'd be a 70-30, 30% in the gi to stay sharp, to keep my grips going, to stay in that game, 70% in no gi to stay athletic and keep moving, and keep forcing myself to be uncomfortable with those young boys, because I can't slow them down with the gi. And that's the one advantage of the gi as we get older with these young guys, is I can slow you down once I get hold of you. But if I don't have that option, now I'm forced to match your athleticism in some way. And because if I don't, you're going to beat me. You're just going to beat me to position, and then it's going to end up, maybe you can't submit me because I'm too skilled at defending and being, smarter than you. But the likelihood of you dominating me in position is very high. And so I think if we want to age, and we want to age athletically, and we want to age and be competitive, we're going to have to do the harder stuff. And that's why I would argue that. But I agree with you 1,000% in what you said.
Oh, that's great. Both great points. I think, it kind of goes to the middle of the conversation where we're talking about, we've evolved in a way that life has gotten easier in a lot of aspects. So naturally, if that's kind of the life that we lead, things are easier. It's easier to go get McDonald's because we don't have to put the work in to prepare the food. We're going to go to the things that are easier, right? Like the lifting at the gym. Oh, I'm really good at these bench press. I'm going to stick to that. So those are really, it makes sense as why we're kind of almost conditioned to do those things. So I think it is important. Like sometimes I do feel like, I can spend less energy in the gi if I want to do that, right? I can relax a little more.
I was going to say, go to an IBJJF tournament and look and go to the World Masters gi. And then go to the World Masters Nogi and look at the volume difference.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? You will see that nobody wants to do Nogi as they get older because it's hard and it kicks your ass. And in a way, you're in some way starting over, and it's a little humiliating and it's a little embarrassing because you don't have the ability to neutralize the way you could. So what I see when I see a bunch of guys in Nogi at older ages is I see a bunch of guys with open minds.
You do some stuff on your property out in Montana, like maybe if you want to like talk about that a little bit and like what exactly you're doing with your educational stuff if people want to find out about it.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. People want to come and do a coaching course with me. We offer a week-long, 2-week, 3-week, 4-week is our longest in-person certificate, program that basically, provides a student with an education in the field they're interested in within our movement matrix. So you want to become a yoga teacher, you can do that with us. You want to become a specific mobility coach. You want to become a mobility coach for combat athletes, so specific to that, to that particular field. So you want to be the guy who warms up the academy. Like, okay, go warm everyone up, or you're teaching mobility classes for your academy. You can come in and work with us so that you can become an educator in that particular, container. And so people will come and do that work. We're in Montana, Whitefish at Glacier National Park. You stay on campus. We usually have about 30 students at a time for each program. So they live and breathe and eat and exist here for that week. It's like an adult summer camp. So it's a good time. And that's always possible. We have an online platform as well, which is Budokon, because Budokon.com or BudokonOnline.com. If somebody can't make it because they live in Australia and they're listening to your show. They can find us there as well. But, one of the things that I just would like to just take 2 seconds to talk about is that, it's nobody's fault in our industry that none of us were educated to be movement coaches. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we're taking people off the street and we're asking them to do incredibly athletic things, but we don't teach them how to move because it's not our educational background. We're jiu-jitsu coaches. Sometimes we're strength coaches too. Sometimes a jiu-jitsu coach happens to be a strength coach, happens to be, have a personal training background, happens to be an MMA coach or have an MMA background. But the lion's share, I think we can all agree, of jiu-jitsu black belts have never been taught to teach movement as an actual, education, and I'm talking about separate from jiu-jitsu. And again, that is no one's fault. We weren't taught that. We were taught what we're taught, and we bring people in and we say, okay, let's learn jiu-jitsu. Totally logical. The problem is jiu-jitsu has gotten so athletic. It's gotten more and more. When you go back and you look at the traditional Japanese approach to jiu-jitsu, it was very self-defense oriented. Step 1, grab this. Step 2, trip the leg. Step 3, that's fine. Makes total sense. Worked in that container. But once it became more sporty, right? Now you're asking for more athleticism. So now that the sport has become super athletic, you got a bunch of hobbyists who are getting injured all the time trying to do an athletic thing without athletic training. So I'm going to argue a point right now that we can no longer play ignorant or dumb and go, gosh, I mean, I didn't know how to teach a guy how to move his body properly before I asked him to carry the weight of another 200-pound person in full speed. You know, but that's the reality of what we're asking these accountants. This guy's an accountant. This guy is works at wherever, and he now comes in and wrestles another human at full speed, trying to basically, and we all know this is true, trying to survive because he's in full survival mode.
Sure.
And he's moving at full speed, at least his capacity of full speed. And to think that this guy's not going to get hurt at some point is naive. But then from naive, it becomes actually, I would argue, it becomes negligent, because at what point do we have to identify that it's negligent to not start providing our students with a proper movement education if we're asking them to do something so athletically demanding, and that we're not teaching them how to be athletes. And to be an athlete is to know how to move properly. Because if you didn't move properly, you'd just be injuring yourself over and over and over again, which is what happens to your typical jiu-jitsu. The only reason we can't put this, we don't have the statistics, the hard statistics to show this. But if you could, I guarantee you get about, your average jiu-jitsu students get about a 5-year span. And that's about what I'd argue 80% of anyone who's ever trained jiu-jitsu got 5 years out of it. And that the other 20% is every one of your remaining, purple, brown, blacks. And then we know how many black belts there are out of the pyramid of people who've ever done jiu-jitsu in their lives. So why is it we're only getting people for 5 years? Because they're getting hurt. And I mean, mostly, I know that's not everybody's story, but a lot of people's story is, man, I hurt my shoulder. Man, I hurt my knee. A lot of injuries, man, a lot. And my whole work is about preventing that. But you can't prevent injury if people don't know how to move. How to move is not the same as moving. You need to move more. You need to move more precisely. You need to move more correctly. And then you can move more and a lot. Because again, same with runners. If you just take the average person, stick them out there and just have them marathon run, they're going to fuck their bodies up. There's no doubt about it. They need a running coach. They need to learn how to run properly. So same with jiu-jitsu. We've got to invest, jiu-jitsu owners need to invest into themselves, becoming educated movers. And then they can then teach that to their students, or invest into your assistant teachers so they can warm the class up with not just jumping jacks and toe touches, but actually movement patterns that the student is using and learning to actually make them a better mover outside of jiu-jitsu. Just Bob can now move better. Bob can now transition from the ground to up to down better because this coach has been trained on how to do that. Versus, because when, let's say you teach someone a technical stand-up, don't you teach that correctly? You don't give them a half-ass technical stand-up. No, you go, guys, the hand goes here, the hips go here, the base goes here. You give them a full breakdown of a proper technical stand-up. But the reality is everything within jiu-jitsu requires that much technical understanding.
That's awesome, man.
Right? Not just the technical stand-up.
Precision of movement, right?
Yes.
That's the key.
That's simple, guys. So, in closing, I think we have got to make this, we got to interrupt. This is the big interruption to our, leg locks was an interruption to the jiu-jitsu culture recently. And I want this to also be an interruption to the jiu-jitsu culture, because we can preserve people's bodies. And you know who wins in this? Everybody. Because the studio owner gets more student retention, because you'd love to have a room full of 50-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
As much as you love having 5 and 10 and 15-year-olds, because they help pay the bills, let's be honest. Kids pay the bills. But so do your aging adults, which you don't have. All you really have is, most schools have kids and young adults, and some aging adults. Yeah. But what if you had as many aging adults as you had kids? Because the middle group is a given. You'll always have young, athletic people in the room. But what you're looking for to run a good business is young people and older people. But the jiu-jitsu community gives very low priority to the aging population. I
agree. Yeah. And it's one of those things where when you really look at the population, at least the people that I interact with the most, I mean, a lot of them are, they're getting into their 30s and into their 40s and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people getting into jiu-jitsu now that are they're getting started for the first time when they're 30. And like you said, they come into the gym, they've got incredibly like rigid hip movement and tight things. Like they have no external rotation. They have all these things going on. And, a big part of it is getting them to actually move a little bit before they can even really do some of these moves. And so I think that I think there's to that. And, even me, like I'm not the best mover per se, but I know that, from 30 to 40, I had like way fewer injuries than I even had from 20 to 30. And I remember one of the things that like was a big thing was actually like focusing on, hey, like looking at my body like a machine and saying, oh, there's some issues going on with this hip. Let me work on this hip. Or, this thoracic spine's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Well, maybe I should give that a little attention. And having some help and guidance from, professionals who know that stuff. It was very helpful because it helped me avoid a lot of injuries before they turned into like needing surgery. So I think
there's not a lot of use, and there's not a lot of use. That's the problem. If everybody was like you, the room would be full of 50-year-olds. But the average person gets hurt and says, fuck that. I cannot afford to be in pain. I got a job to do. I got kids. Yeah, I got this. I got that. They're not you.
Yep.
That's right.
For sure. That's important, man, what you do. And I'll say one of the things that whenever I watch some of your content, like the way you move is so fluid. It's amazing because you don't move like a 50. You don't even move like a 30-year-old, man. You move like a
Hey, thank you, brother. That's the best compliment you could ever receive. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, man, I appreciate your time. Cameron, thanks for sharing some of your knowledge with us, man. Really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Hey, I appreciate you guys. I just want to say that, I still obviously support and follow you guys. I love always the content that you guys produce. It's been, I think you've made a beautiful contribution to the jiu-jitsu community. And because, at this point gosh, I mean, what is it? How long have you been doing this now?
Oh, it's podcast, probably 6 years. And Chewy's you've been doing like your YouTube channel.
YouTube channel's about 10 years. Yeah.
I mean, you start reaching those milestones, you start realizing that you're becoming a staple within a community. It's no longer, you're no longer trying to like penetrate, you're a part of the fabric of a community when you've been around for a decade. And I think that's what's fantastic about what you guys are doing is, consistency is what people trust. They trust when someone loves what they do and just keeps doing it and is there, and then you look back and, it's like, I always say, be the restaurant that's been in the neighborhood for 30 years.
Yeah. That's right.
That's the restaurant I want to eat at.
That's right. Because there's a reason why they've been there for that long.
It's that simple.
That's right.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
It was a pleasure having you back on, bro. And good luck to you in the future competitions and everything going on with the camps and stuff.
Right on. I'll see you guys at either the Masters I'm sure I'll see you at something.
I'm sure I'll see you at something. I'll make sure I'll come up and say, hey.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Later,
take
bro.
care.
All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you got something from it. Hopefully some of you guys that really hate Nogi, hopefully you didn't get too ticked off. Again, I whether you do one or the other, it makes no difference to me. But I really do think sometimes that there's something about doing things that don't maybe come easy to you and there being value in it. Sure, if you have like a gym where maybe all the Nogi people are a bunch of crazy like fighters and they're dangerous and you're getting injured, yeah, maybe stay away from them. But if you have a good group of people where you can train, it shouldn't be a big deal. Like he was talking about how like kids and like whatever pay the bills. I'm like, not at our gym. Like my gym's actually like my gym trends older. Like, so it's mostly like 20, like, early 20s and up. And our core is probably somewhere in the late 20s into the early 30s. That's kind of the core. And we have a good amount of people that are still in their 40s and 50s that still get on the mat. They don't train like they used to because, again, life happens, things change, whatever, but they're still there. They're still moving around at their own pace. And again, I think that's kind of having a good gym dynamic where we can always adjust. Right. Like, again, if I'm like, let's say, me, I'm a 215-pound black belt, right? Fairly strong, whatever. In one day, I can roll with a 100-pound woman who knows nothing. Did this the other day, by the way. Roll with 100-pound woman who knows nothing. Switch over to rolling with a 185-pound college wrestler, and we scrap. Who's in his early 20s. Then moving to like a 45-year-old guy, black belt, who's still pretty good, but maybe not the most competitive, whatever, and adjusting and getting something from all those rounds, right? Even like, again, you can adjust. I think that a good gym, a hallmark of a good gym, if we're talking about longevity, is having gears. Everybody should learn how to have gears and how to dial it back, dial it forward, how to shift from 1 to 5, whatever. So this way, you don't just have one gear where all you do is go hard, right? You have ability to play both, because especially for longevity's sake, you're going to have those days where maybe you're not going so hard, and you have to have partners that can dial it back with you, and vice versa. So anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, got something from it. Again, if you guys have any thoughts or ideas, I always, tell you can send them over Instagram or send us an email. But Instagram works. I usually forward them up. So if you guys have thoughts on the podcast, because sometimes people will do this, and again, this is helpful for us. You can go to Instagram. You can send me a message, send us a message on the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast Instagram, and be happy to look at it, answer it for you, or even answer a question in the future. But again, appreciate you guys for being here as always. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping us bring this podcast to your ears. Charlotte's Web. If you guys want to check them out, they are one of the premier CBD companies out there. They make all kinds of products, from CBD gummies, tinctures, which is like the little dropper. They have CBN gummies, which is a different cannabinoid that's really useful for, again, trying to get to sleep and stay asleep, which is great for your recovery, because if we can get good sleep, we're going to recover better. They also have other products such as functional mushroom products, using things like lion's mane to help improve focus, and reishi, which can be used for stress management, things like that. So a lot of cool products that get into all this recovery stuff we're talking about, dealing with stress and helping deal with, all the sports induced inflammation that we talk about. It's a really good product to sort of aid you in that recovery. It definitely will not sort of bypass bad sleep, bad diet. But again, if you're talking about the small percentages that you want to try, CBD can sort of help you increase those and be an assist for that. So check them out at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order. Also, a little secret in my bearded repertoire is, if you are trying to get a little motivation for training, sometimes, what works really well is just to go buy some new gear. Now, sometimes, like, your spouse may be like, hey, listen, you got enough stuff. You don't need another gi. You don't need another rash guard, whatever, which could be true. But sometimes just having a new set of rash guards or a new gi is really fun. I remember getting my new Nogi Jiu-Jitsu stuff that I got. I was like so excited to wear it. I remember one time getting a gi and then, got sick. Like, the day it came in, I also got sick.
Yeah.
So I was down for like a week, and I was like looking at the gi, just waiting. Like, I can't wait to wear this gi to training next week. So, with that, if you guys want to check out any gear, go to the website at epicrollbjj.com. They're one of our sponsors. They make great stuff. Great looking gear, great quality stuff. They do a great job with customer service. And if you guys want to check them out, use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order at checkout. Also, if you like the podcast, you enjoy it, and you'd like to support us, become a Patreon member at patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast for a very inexpensive price, probably less than for some of you guys you spend on coffee in a day. You can get basically a membership to the podcast, which supports us. You get a bunch of other perks for it. Everybody knows how this works. It's like this is not something new. If you guys want to check out the Patreon membership and see what you get, and also see the price and everything else, again, it's not expensive at all. You can go to the website at patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast to get all the details on it with pricing and the perks. And guys, if you want to get an ebook that I give away that comes along with a video called Focus Jiu-Jitsu, go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. This is to join my Chew Crew email list that I send my daily email to. When you join up, you'll get an ebook that's called Focus Jiu-Jitsu. For any of you guys where I'm talking about rest, right? I'm talking about taking days off, and I'm talking about getting more from your training. One of the things that you're going to have to do on the days that you train is you have to have a very clear focus as to what you're doing on the mat. Because if you're going to sacrifice some of the quantity of your training, you have to get better quality training. And one of the ways to get better quality training is to make sure that you know what the hell you're doing when you're on the mats, and you know what your goals are, you know what you're working towards, you have a clear focus. Now, the issue is that a lot of people go into gyms, and sometimes a coach is not tailoring the class to their needs, right? Because they have a whole group that they're working, which happens, and it's understandable. So you have to take it upon yourself, and you have to do this at some point anyway. Your coach is going to show you things and they can add to your game, but at some point you have to do a little bit of self-assessment and sort of direct yourself to a degree. Your coach is essentially at some point helping you teach yourself. And so what you can do with the ebook is it gives you 12 different strategies on how to identify some areas that you could focus on, some different things you could focus on during your open rolls. So when you're going to an open mat, or if your gym just has open rolling, that kind of thing, it will give you clear things that you can focus on, clear strategies that you could focus on to get the most from those, which again will help you have a clear line of sight as to, am I getting better? Am I improving? Am I making progress? So just something to chew on if you want to get it. It's at my website, chewjitsu.net/join. You'll get the ebook and the video for free. You'll get my daily email, which I send out, and again, goes through a lot of cool stuff. If you want to check it out, you can unsubscribe at any time and keep the ebook for yourself. And guys, with that said, thank you so much for joining. Oh, and I've been talking about this recently, and I'll keep doing this as we end the podcast. If you guys are interested, my co-host here, Eugene, a black belt in jiu-jitsu and also a doctor of physical therapy. And again, he's been my go-to guy, and he's like my gym's go-to guy for the last 15 years. Anytime someone's broken, we go to Eugene and he fixes, he makes us better. And if you guys are dealing with whether it's an injury, whether you're coming back from surgery, or if you're one of those smart people who's like, you know what, I would like to avoid both of those things. And if I can have someone customize a plan for me to give me the exercises that are going to deal with my specific muscular imbalances, then check out Eugene. He has a coaching program where he can do an assessment with you, and he can customize a routine specifically for your needs. Again, the reason why I think this is important is because we all have different bodies and makeups. We have different muscle tightnesses and stuff. Some stuff is very similar because we do jiu-jitsu, right? And we have problems, but other things are different. Eugene, if they want to sort of contact you, where should they go?
There is a contact page on my website, jujitsutherapist.com. You can email me or on social media.
So jujitsutherapist.com.
Yeah, that's the easiest way.
And
there's a contact page. There's a little info on remote coaching, and I work with, I work with people that are coming back from injury or just interested in getting back to jiu-jitsu in a safe way. Somebody that's needs rehab, or even somebody that's just kind of limited and needs some mobility work.
Mm-hmm.
And we do customized programming basically month to month.
Yeah.
And we adjust that as needed and get you feeling better.
So,
yep.
And again, so you guys can go there and you do like a 15-minute consultation with them.
So we do a call at first, and then actually if we,
because you got to make sure I can actually help you. You do the 15-minute call. I can actually help you, and we seem like we're a good fit. Versus
right, and the way it kind of works, we set up a call. Actually, once we do that 15-minute call, if we decide to move forward, we actually do a 1-hour video call where I take you through all the movements and do kind of an onboarding session where we kind of just answer all your questions and go through all the movements, and I just kind of have you do some things. And figure out what's going on. Then we give you a customized program. So
cool. So guys, again, just something to throw out at you if you're interested in, that sort of thing. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you next week.